Okay. All right, everybody. As promised, we have Miss Japan herself, Ishii-san, Aiko-san,
Hi.
and we're gonna figure this out. Japan, I've got to say, I'm a believer. I'm a believer in God and in miracles and all sorts of stuff, but I had my doubts about the finding a Japanese chapter leader. It seemed like a pretty big feat because in all of our travels, the one country who seemed the most resistant to high noon, the most allergic to high noon, was Japan. Um, and so, just for context, everybody out there, we love Japan. We have so many people from Japan in our programs, and so many second generation who are from Japanese parents who are in our programs, in our world. But it took us a few years before we got any real participation from especially Japanese men and even just our events. We had, I remember in Korea, we did a tour where there's one place in Japan, I think it was Gyeongju, where it was like 60 women who came to our event. That's it. And they were all Japanese wives who lived in Korea. And then there's one Japanese man in the back. He was the first man ever. And he was way in the back and he was just there to support his wife. And he wanted that to be known because he was like so far away from everybody else, kind of on his phone. But even that was a win for us. But it was so hard to get Japanese men to come to our events for some reason, right? And so it was Higuchi-san in New Jersey, I don't know, maybe 2018 or 19, who spoke out on behalf of all men, on behalf of all Japanese men. He spoke out and said his testimony in front of his home community. It was very difficult for him, but he stood up. And from then on, he's been on fire for high noon. He started meeting with other men. And thanks to Sammy and Benji's dad, Uyama-san, they started a men's group, which has now been going on for years, right? And so that was in and of itself the first miracle and evidence that there is a God, you know? But then to start a chapter, that was a whole another thing. And so this time around, we were going to go to Japan. And then Mitsue was determined. I've never seen her like this. She took full responsibility. We're going to go to Japan. And she made it, she had people that she's talking to, but she had just a confidence that we needed to go and that something good would happen. And we ended up going to Japan. And at the very end of our trip, Aiko, what happened? It was on the Sunday, the day before we were all going to leave. Somebody was talking to you, and then give us this breakdown. Like, how did you end up in this position where you're the chapter leader?
Yeah, Sammy asked me if I wanted to become a chapter leader, and I really uh processed in my mind a lot. But then I felt called, and I said yes.
Not only did you say yes, so Aiko is gainfully employed. And we were just talking, the first time I ever met you was you visited the Wolfenbergers at our Airbnb, and we were talking about your job extensively. And you love your job. You love what you do. You help people. It's meaningful. You love your coworkers. You love everything about it. So I was like, well, that basically makes her not a candidate for working with us because she loves what she does. Like you don't meet people like that often who really enjoy what they do. And on that Sunday where you were asked by Sammy if you wanted to be the chapter leader and you felt a calling to do so, you're like, but first I have to talk to my boss. And your boss was about 10 feet away from you at that time, right?
Yeah, right.
And then you just ended up talking right there and then and planting the seed. So like it all happened relatively quickly, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to back up. I just wanted to kind of give some context because it really was bizarre that we went to Japan. We were there for a little bit less than a week, something like a week. And at the end of it, we ended up with this superstar chapter leader. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I want to unpack this. First of all, let's get into you. So who are you and where were you born and where were you raised? Because those are two different things, right?
Right, it is. So, hello. My name is Aiko, and I'm half American. My mother's from America, Boston. My father's from Japan. And I was born in Utah, but came to Japan when I was 6 months old. So I was basically raised in Japan, Saitama. And ever since I've lived in Japan. And last 8 years ago, my husband's half African, and we still live here in Japan. And I have a job that I love. And yeah, I I speak Japanese regularly. So my English might be weird sometimes.
It's amazing though. No, you have great English, and I know
Thank you.
everybody second guesses their second language when they speak it, but you communicate very well.
Thank you.
Um, so yeah, you were born in Utah of all places, Mormon capital of the world, and raised in Japan. And then how did you hear about High Noon? Like, well, what was your first introduction to High Noon?
Yeah, 5 years ago, Hainu came to Japan once. The Mr. and Mrs. Wolfenberger came and gave a 3-day seminar as we invited them. When I was involved with uh, International Family Association Japan, and I was shocked, like, oh, I didn't know that this kind of a organization that talks so honestly about absolute sex and really, really hands-on on this issue. So I was hoping that High Noon will come to Japan often and it would be more active in Japan, which never happened. It was 5 years ago that I first learned about High Noon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to, I think it was Justin Okamoto. I wasn't there that time, but I think
Yeah.
Justin Okamoto snuck us in the back door of the country and ushered us in through the corridor. And we had this
Yeah.
unofficial event. So, kind of
Yeah.
traditionally, High Noon has been having tours in Korea and around Asia in the late summer, fall. And I guess that somehow worked to create some sort of workshop. And that was your
Mhm.
first introduction. And so you were impacted. Did you feel casually like, oh, wow, this is really cool? And then you kind of forgot about it? Or did something about your experience stick with you?
Oh, yeah. It was actually my own issue that I wanted to deal with. And then also I knew that a lot of second gen would um look for this. But I'm a busy person regularly that I might uh think about high noon sometimes, occasionally, but it just wasn't in the center of my mind. So I went not actively contact or like to go forward with the high noon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it was there somewhere in your mind, but not a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, but then this time around, when we came, so it's been 5 years since High Noon's been to Japan.
Mhm.
You helped to organize a lot of this, didn't you?
Yeah. Actually, in the
How did that
beginning,
happen?
um, well, like, yeah, as you mentioned before, my boss, my coworker, he was somehow involved with High Noon, and he asked me if I could take responsibility in like inviting High Noon to Japan because I was like in a leader position of the IFA, International Families in Japan, and I'm a type of person like wouldn't say no if if I feel um needed. Like, yeah. So in the beginning, I just said, yeah, okay, I'll do what I can. So
Hmm,
that's how it started.
got it. So you kind of got roped in, sounds like.
Yeah.
It's so funny. To be honest, Higuchi-san also got roped in. He's very open about this. The reason why he gave a testimony is he knew that he had a huge target on his back. He said, the first time he experienced us, it was accidentally. It was at our big summit in Las Vegas at the very beginning of High Noon becoming High Noon. And he had some guilt issues because he was struggling with his own sexual integrity at that time. And when I knew that he lived in New Jersey, so when we were putting on the event in New Jersey, I asked if he could help with it. And he had this lingering feeling like they're going to ask me to do something like give a testimony or something like that. And then when I did, he was like, I knew it. And he really didn't want to, but he knew he had to. He felt like kind of God had his number, that this was just his time. And, so we have a bunch of testimonies like that where people are almost backed into a corner, it seems like, but it turns out that that's the very thing that they needed. And God was just finding his way, so same with you is, it was, you had a good experience. So there's that, but not enough for you to be championing our cause at all since then, 5 years. And then your boss kind of politely, I'm sure, asks you to help. And he's also your boss. And you just end up helping. And so you helped to organize it. You had a bunch of meetings, right? You helped to make these events happen. I was a part of one of your meetings. You invested a lot into it. But at what point did you start to feel like, oh, this is something that I actually could care a lot about? Because that seems, it wasn't really there before we showed up. So at what point did it go from just this, High Noon's okay, to I want to work with High Noon? Like, at what point during that week did that happen?
Yeah. I knew somebody had to do this in Japan because I waited for 5 years. Not like waited, but I stepped back watching how it goes. And nothing, literally, nobody knows about High Noon in Japan. And that part, I felt like, oh, maybe it's because I didn't do anything. And maybe it can go the same way for the next 5-10 years. And I wouldn't want to see that because I know that there are so many youth or grown-ups longing for this. And I knew I wanted somebody, and it didn't have to be me. Somebody has to do this. And in the Japan chapter leader position, and I was kind of still hoping if there's somebody, but then actually it made me click in my mind exactly when Sammy asked me. I went, until that moment I wasn't going to step up. But then actually I felt called. There was a 6,000 second gen that True Mother called in Korea. And I was luckily able to go there. And what True Mother mentioned was second gen is her hope. And she sees us as crystals. So now is the time that I felt that this is something that can really bring back her children, and that she really looking so strongly. So anyway, so these things came at once. It was like the week before you came that I met True Mother, and it was just so touched my heart a lot. I felt, okay, God, it's me.
Yeah.
I'm the person you chose, I guess.
That's amazing. Yeah, I want to unpack that a little bit. So True Mother called a lot of second gen to come from specifically Japan to Korea for an event, right? You were one of a horde. There's 5,000 or so.
Yes, 7,000.
7,000, huge amount. Showed up at the stadium. True Mother was really moved. And then you were really moved because you felt connected to her, right? You really felt like you connected to her cause and connected to her, and you wanted to help. That's my understanding, right? And then that was lingering in you. True Mother, I want to help you. And in your heart, the week leading up to us coming out there,
Mhm.
and then we show up, and then you're asked, can you help second gen? And you're like, yes. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, like I had a lot of uh other reasons, like, my work, and then also my family, and then like some kind of reputation that I would worry about, that I would be in that position.
Sure.
And a lot of reasons that came up all at once were all not enough to say no, because I really felt called.
Hmm.
That was the yes that you were
Well,
describing just now.
I know we can't really know, but do you think that if you didn't have that experience the week before, that you wouldn't have been so open to the opportunity?
Well, I don't know. That's a difficult question, because I would still pray about it and God would
Hmm.
show me anyway.
Sure.
But it was definitely like a turning point. I mean, like, yeah, God was very clear about that.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, that's really cool. And thank you so much for saying yes. That was a shocker because I was within earshot and I heard some of it, but I was also doing other stuff. And it was also a rough day for me. The day that you said yes was the day that I got beaten up by Japan. Do you remember? It took me 5 hours to get to Sunday service because
Yes, I do. We
I
never
was,
showed up.
my God. That day, for all of you, I became Kevin from Home Alone, and I lost my high noon family in a Japanese subway system. And I didn't have a phone that worked. I didn't have any cash. I couldn't get cash out of the bank machine. It wouldn't give me cash, so I couldn't go anywhere. And then I had a credit card, and I was like, okay, I'll just try to take a taxi. And then I lost my credit card in the
Oh
taxi
my
that
God.
kicked me out. It was just like I was trying so many different ways just to get to Sunday service. And the more I tried, the worse it got. And anyway, it was such a nightmare. But that was, I feel like maybe I paid indemnity for something good to
Yeah,
happen.
now I didn't know that story, but now I do.
It literally, I got there, we
Oh.
left our Airbnb at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't get to Sunday service until after it was like almost 1 o'clock. So you
Hmm.
do the math on how many hours it took me to take a 45-minute ride. It took me, felt like Moses, it takes 40 days, but I took 40 years to get there. So anyway, that was the same day, and it'll be etched in my mind for two very important reasons. One, because I'm an idiot, and two, because you're very cool. So now that you're the chapter leader, how are you feeling? Like, are you feeling hopeful for Japan and High Noon? Like, what? I was really inspired, honestly, by your sense of vision when you took this job. That you have a clear reason for doing what you're doing. You're not just, there's some people who are broadly optimistic, but they have no hope of achieving their goals because it's just like, I don't know, world peace will happen. How? I don't know. I'll just watch a lot of TV or something. They have no idea how to get to their big hopes and their dreams, like how to
Mhm.
get them off the ground. So, but I was really inspired by your vision and your determination. So what are you seeing in terms of the future of Hainun Japan?
Yeah, I prayed about being in this position of chapter leader and what God wanted to see. And one thing that I was always praying about was about the sisters around me. Like, I have very close sisters, like church, that they would find spouses and have a happy family, which is very difficult for them right now, because the blessing and the matching is like 6 girls and one boy. Like, the yeah, there's so much less men in the matching process, that a lot of
Hmm.
sisters are like just getting older and older each year without a spouse. So I was like this was an answer for my prayer, like to have more than 100 brothers and sisters go to a matching process after this through the high noon. And I wanted to offer that as testimony to true parents that here are your children coming back. And to do that, I wanted to have a team and to like broadly like spread high noon is here, because right now literally nobody knows high noon here in Japan. So I would want to like give them hope and to have this ball rolling in Japan. And I feel very, very energetic when I think about that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And just so you all know, I attribute it to the era in which we live, that I believe that there's always a way for everybody to win. If you're willing to kind of allow yourself to be open-minded and open-hearted to get to that place where it's possible. But Aiko-san got to keep the job that she loves and be a chapter leader. So she gets to do things that she loves and finds meaningful all together at once without burning out. That's the goal here, is to not burn out and to not overexert herself, but to be highly effective. And that's honestly just, a merit of the age kind of thing, where you don't have to sacrifice this wonderful job you love for doing something that you feel really called to do. You can do actually both. And that's something that we really are wanting of our chapter leaders, but also of all of you out there who are listening, to understand that giving up something like an addiction isn't like a loss. You're not losing anything. You're just shedding this chain that's holding you back from reaching your potential so that you can have so much more. But you have to allow yourself to be in the magical space of possibility. And so Aiko, I think, to be honest, if I'm just to look back and tell you what I see, is that meeting with True Mother helped you get into that state of what if and how do I, and then you were offered something, a seed was planted in the possibility pool, and you could see that it was doable, and you kind of jumped in, and now we're doing the work of figuring out how to manage all this. But it's like you don't have to die in order to be resurrected. Just the part of you that doesn't work needs to die so that you can have more thriving. And so, with this whole situation, it's really cool to watch, because I think before High Noon wasn't ready to work in such a way, but now we are, and you are. So it's a perfect timing to work together to create thriving, so that Japan thrives through you. But it's not all on you, because she's already building a team. She's already meeting with people, and it's not all on her. It's not, we're working together on this. So it's just really inspiring to me, because it's not like we don't have to give you bad news. Like, I'm sorry, but if you want to work for us, you're going to have to stop talking to your family or something like that. You guys got to give your soul to High Noon. No, it's like you get both, So, I mean, I hope you're encouraged.
Really grateful about that. Really grateful. I really love my job, as you mentioned. So I really feel called for High Noon. It's amazing that I can do it at this moment. Yeah.
So everybody, Aiko's email is aiko@highnoon.org. That's her official email. And Aiko-san, if people really are like, oh man, she is such a cool person, I really want to help her. Is there anything that you'd like help with? If you could call out to the universe and say, here's how you can help High Noon Japan, do you see any way in which people who are listening could contribute to that?
Oh yeah, of course. We're really looking for help. Specifically at the moment, I'm looking for somebody who can like manage social media because I'm terrible about that. And our team, none of us are. So like to post something or even like to, if you know how to create an Instagram page or like,
Sound like an old lady.
that level. Yeah. Anyway, so somebody who can like specifically, yeah, looking for somebody who can do that. And also, yeah, we're always inviting people to our groups and to want to grow more and more groups and to raise people who can take care of others who wants to. Yeah, basically.
Amazing. Yeah, and everybody, this is cool. I don't know if I've been systematic enough about this point, but it kind of feels like, baseball cards. I don't know if you guys are crazy about baseball in Japan, but in most sports, back in the day, especially, there were cards for each player, and you'd want to get your favorite players' cards, and it would have their statistics, and it felt really personal because you would collect the cards of the people that you're interested in. And it seems like High Noon's turning into that everybody, High Noon's, one big team, and we're got a ton of volunteers all over the world and all that. But even our staff and our chapter leaders, like all this, people can feel called to help somebody in particular. And so, yeah, I really encourage all of you, if you are from Japan, or if your parents are from Japan, if you feel a call, because a lot of people right now, because of all that's going on in our movement and Japan, that whole situation, feel called to pray for Japan, to help Japan. Well, to me, this is actually a massive way which Japan can start to gain many, many victories, is when we start reclaiming our sexual integrity as individuals, as families, as communities. We start living the High Noon life of being open and sharing together the struggle, so we're not burdened by the weight of all of humanity just by ourselves, and so that we can actually start getting beyond the past and all of our resentment and limitations and all that in order to build an amazing future. So High Noon is going to play a massive role in the next phase of the Japanese providence. So if you feel called to help, don't forget to reach out to Aiko, and to even just pray for her. But also, if you want to help substantially, to reach out to her. And she's building a team, she's building momentum, and she can use all the help you can offer. So just putting that out there. Aiko-san, I by the way, she just got super embarrassed when I started speaking like that, because I'm talking about asking to help her, and I feel like she's a very modest person. But do you have anything that we didn't cover that you'd like people to know, either about you or about High Noon or about High Noon Japan, or anything at all that you just feel is an important thing?
Yeah, so we're just gonna move forward, as True Mother says, and looking for people who will want to do this together.
Amazing.
And I'm really, really grateful for what High Noon has built up. And we're just like, taking the baton. It's Japanese, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, baton?
Yeah, baton. Oh, is that English?
It's kind of English, but you just have to stop. And it took me about 4 seconds to figure out. All right, everybody, we just got cut off real quick, technological problem, but we're basically done here, Aiko. Thank you so much, first of all, for signing up for this. This is really cool. And thank you for joining us on the podcast. That's the easy part, but the hard part was signing up for this with such a great heart. Yeah, and everybody, if you need anything at all from Aiko, that's her email address, Aiko, AIKO at highnoon.org. And yeah, just reach out and tell her you love her, tell her that you care, tell her a bunch of nice stuff and that you want to help. If you have any complaints, send them to Sammy at highnoon.org. All good stuff sent to Aiko. Yeah, how about that?
Thank you.
All right, yeah. Say one last thing that we can, uninterrupted. You could just say goodbye, it was nice, or anything, but I'm just gonna send it to you for one last. I want to hear from you one last time.
Hey. Yeah, I love Japan, and I'm really looking forward to work with High Noon. Okay, thank you for this today.
Thank you, everybody.